It's time for Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
I'm not a Republican, but if I was, I would be extremely concerned about censorship in social media, which is a real thing. Censorship of Republican ideas and conservative ideas is absolutely a real thing. It's not just real, it's accepted as being the right thing to do by certain organizations. I mean, they've been caught on camera and hidden camera talking about the ways that you can silence conservative voices. For sure, conservatives are being discriminated against on social media by social media platforms. And even if you're not banning them from those platforms, if you're shadow banning them, if you're making it very difficult for people to find them, which is real. It's a real thing that they do. Like if you have a post on social media, it doesn't just go up in chronological order anymore. Now it's affected by an algorithm. They can, in certain social media platforms, use that algorithm to discriminate. So they can decide, hey, this guy keeps chirping on and on about Hillary Clinton's war crimes and all this. We don't need this guy around, okay? We don't need this guy and all of his right-wing bolt and all his Make America Great Again bolts. We'll shadow ban him. And so they can shove you into this category where it's very difficult to find your page. And it's very difficult for you to show up. And a lot of people have seen their views drop drastically. There's a woman named Megan Murphy. Well, on Twitter, she wrote, "A man is never a woman." They told her she has to take down that tweet. So you know what she did? She made a screenshot of it. She took down that tweet, and then she posted a picture of the screenshot. And then they banned her for life. You know who's not banned for life? O.J. Simpson. Double homicide, armed kidnapping. He's fine. But this lady who's just said a man is never a woman, which biologically is correct.
Johnny and the Professor.
And another exciting episode of Johnny and the Professor.
Common sense for senseless times.
Where we talk politics, pop culture, and pandemics. Like that? There's plenty more where that came from.
Pestilence, too, is a good one today.
Define pestilence.
A pestilence is disease. A disease over an area is a pestilence.
Okay.
I mean, it's biblical. You know, they talk about, the four horsemen, pestilence and famine and pestilence is one of the...
So is this like the end of the world?
Well, it depends, I guess, on who you ask. I mean, to the toilet paper hoarders, people who are walking around in vac suits so they can, afraid of catching this, I guess it's the end of the world for them.
I had a new theory on this whole pandemic, and I talked about it in my Friday morning commentary on Coffee Talk. I have a couple different kind of theories here. Would you like to hear them?
Oh, these should be amazing. Yes, I'd love to.
Okay. I'm bringing in the climate change into this for a reason. As the millions of years that the Earth has gotten cold and then warmer and then colder and then warmer and then colder, keep that in your mind, okay? Maybe as we get warmer, it's like thawing out some of these viruses and stuff that maybe were dormant because it was too cold. But you've worked in food service, whether we were dishwashers or backup cooks or whatever, and when handling food, things have to either be cold or hot to stay out of that danger zone. Right?
That's correct.
Maybe as the Earth is getting warmer because we're coming out of an ice age, that we're in that danger zone where these viruses are kind of coming about because it's not cold enough to keep them dead, and it's not hot enough to keep them dead. We're getting in that danger zone, kind of like a foodborne illness. Does that make sense?
It does. There are some kernels of truth in there. And
okay.
There is issues about they've had if you have ancient parts of the world when things have been frozen, there is concern when they can identify, for example, animal life and the time zones on it based on how what the viruses and the bacteria and things look like. And if you did have a bacteria that ran through the world, say 100,000 years ago, we don't have any immunity to it now, and it came out, a virus would be the case. It's possible. Yes, you could have some type of a true pandemic. You could have a Stephen King, The Stand kind of, pandemic. That is possible. When you look at these coronaviruses, the COVID-19 and the H1N1, which was they called it the swine flu.
How come we didn't freak out during the bird flu and the swine flu and the SARS and the...
I don't have an answer for, other than that the media didn't go crazy over it like they do now. I mean, the media is pushing this like it is the end of days, and yet again there were about 15,000 people died from the swine flu 2009, 2010, extra that were directly attributed to that in that cold and flu season. And the Obama administration didn't actually declare a national emergency on it till about 1,000 people had died. I think it's just a matter of 24-hour news cycle. It could just be politics, that they were trying to give Barack Obama, make him look good, because the media was always in his court, and the media says otherwise is in the media and is lying to themselves. I mean, I did think that was strange, because the Trump administration has taken some massive steps to try to deal with this, far more than the Obama administration did with the swine flu. And yet, I listened to somebody on MSNBC or something that was saying he should be held for negligent homicide for the fact that he hasn't done enough steps to stop this.
Wow.
Again, but I mean, again, it is. It's crazy.
Right. Right
now, I mean, up in Seattle, in the university up there, they're testing a vaccine for COVID-19, and there's about a dozen other places across the country that are testing them also. The Trump administration opened it up to private industry and said, go to it, guys. Do as best as you can, because we need this as quick as we can. Now, in probably another week or two, because vaccine making them is not that difficult. You need to have the strain of the virus, and there's a technique that you use. It's it's like building a building. It's the same. It may be slightly different every time, but they know how to build it. So in a week or two, we might actually begin to have a vaccine, a preliminary vaccine coming out, which proves that when science puts its mind to it, they can cure any disease except for Trump derangement syndrome.
Was there anything he could have done to have gotten kudos from?
Oh, from the left? No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if he'd have walked out and touched the waters and healed everyone in the country, they would have said he was putting the medical industry out of business.
Yeah.
There's nothing that he's going to do. And because it's news, everyone's running with it. I mean, we're talking about it, for goodness sakes. And I mean, I'm not living in terror. I haven't really changed my life at all, other than I'm not going to be able to go to the VFW for, I get a hamburger every week at the VFW, because they're going to be closed down, I'm sure, because of the restaurant restriction on them. And they're closing down entirely. They're selling their building, and they're having to move somewhere else. So, I mean, I feel sad. They're going, I didn't get my last hamburger. I think I'll be able to make do. I don't think I'll waste away and starve to death.
Right. You have some reserve.
I have some reserves.
Yeah. I do too. I'm not
calling the kettle fat.
Exactly. Exactly.
One of the things I think is really strange about this whole thing with the COVID-19 that's bothering me, and again, this is just because I'm a kind of a strict constitutionalist. I get a little bit nervous when the government starts saying, everybody closes their restaurant, everybody can't gather together in 10 people, everybody can't do all these things.
That's making me nervous too.
We'll talk like adult people here. Donald Trump is not Hitler, nor is he trying to take over the country as a totalitarian regime. Bernie Sanders, a whole nother matter probably, but Donald Trump, no. I always wondered, when you have something like this, he has the ability, because of a national emergency, I mean, he could declare martial law in places if he needed to.
Right.
I mean, he can shut down elections if he needed to, and he probably would get away with it. They did that, in Ohio? They stopped it entirely, closed down the polling. Trump didn't do it, but the governor of the state did. And I do get nervous when the government is saying, get in line like nice little sheep and do what we tell you to do.
Right.
Because we have a national emergency. Again, I don't think Trump is a dictator, but I wonder, what if your next president is? And you have another problem.
It's almost like we're stair-stepping, just little baby steps. Well, we're going to take away some of your rights here, but it's for your own good, 9/11. We're going to kind of surveil you, but if you're not doing anything wrong, it's okay. You shouldn't have anything to worry about.
Which is what the KGB said also, but okay.
Right. Now we're going to ask you not to group up at all. Oh, we want to take your guns away too, because mental illness.
Mental illness is an issue, and we're afraid that if you have your guns, there'll be shootouts over toilet paper over at Walmart or something, so that'd be a problem. Because what people don't realize is that Trump has been actually telling a lot of the states to handle this yourself. Tell me what you need and handle this yourself, and the government will help you. Because I hate to tell people this, but the 10th Amendment of the Constitution says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, not prohibited by it to the states, is reserved for the states, respectively, to the people. So, I mean, we actually are supposed to have that power. We're supposed to be in charge of it ourselves.
Right.
And yet, all I'm hearing from, again, mostly from the left, in this country is Trump's not doing enough. He should be doing more. He should be doing more. He should be doing more. Well, how many rights do you want them to take away? How many of us do you have to kill to make the rest of us safe? Is another way of saying it.
Right.
How many things you're willing to take away for our own safety?
And I think the press didn't help.
No, I agree. They didn't help. They've been running with this because it's news. It keeps them busy. They were able to use it to attack Trump for, they'll say he's incompetent, he's bad, he's doing these horrible things, yet they want him to do more. Aren't they afraid he's a dictator? So if he does more, isn't he becoming a dictator? Isn't that not what they want?
And the best thing he could have done was shut down travel from China, and then they called him a racist for it. But now Canada is shutting down their borders. How come we're not calling them racist? And all these other countries are doing it. How come they're not being called racist?
Trump's closing down our side, too. You know, he shut down the border on the United States side also. And the next one's going to be the Mexican border because that's the place it should be shut down.
But how come all these other countries that are doing it, how come we're not shouting them down as racists?
Well, because Trump derangement syndrome only works on Trump.
Oh.
I mean, it doesn't work on other people. The big problem with most of the ideologies between the left and the right, the conservative and the liberal, there's a huge amount of hypocrisy on both sides, but the left almost has the market cornered on it because it's always do what I say, not what I do. Let's have gun control, screams this Hollywood celebrity as their security detail is armed to the teeth. Let people across the border and treat them well, as they say to their illegal low-paid housekeeper that they're keeping in place because they'll deport them if they don't work for next to nothing. I see the world. I don't necessarily have to like it.
Right.
But it's weird when you look the difference between those two sides. And this is an issue that was something that a kind of a related matter, but I've been going through my head lately, is the word tolerance. It's a word that people that get used a lot. You're supposed to tolerate other people's beliefs according to the left, unless, of course, you disagree with their beliefs, because they're not tolerant of people who disagree with them. The weird thing about tolerance is to tolerate something means that you have to be opposed to something, because if not, you just agree to it. If I tolerate the fact that you like the first 3 Star Wars movies, okay, I can be tolerant of the fact I think you're deranged. Well, actually, the only advantage of that was the last 3 movies made me appreciate the first 3 movies.
Exactly.
But in the case of that, but I mean, the idea, it means you have to be in opposition. So it's okay to say, I tolerate somebody's lifestyle. I don't have to celebrate it, but I can tolerate it and they can live the way they want to live.
Well, now you have to celebrate things you don't agree with now.
Well, see,
and if you don't...
Because everybody has to have the same beliefs. The most intolerant people are the people in this country on the left, because they have their emotional answers to everything, and if you disagree with them, you can go through the list. For me, you always call me, I'm a bigot, I'm a misogynist, I'm toxic, I'm all these other things, just because I don't happen to agree with what they're doing, but I don't take away their right to do it. I mean, the old Voltaire's line is, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. And that's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to have different beliefs. And I find that when you look at it, that's one of the things dramatically missing. And if you don't have people on the left who are willing to accept the idea of that tolerance means I'm in opposition but allowing you to have your own ideas, then you're turning into a dictatorship. And this goes back to the coronavirus idea. If you can have a government that can just tell people for your own good, we're sealing this, we're doing that, we're restricting this, we're cutting that, we're shutting down this business, we're cutting out that business, all the different things that are going, where does it stop? If you try to take power away from people by violence, they fight. That's what the Nazis learned and the Soviets learned. But if you make them frightened enough, you can make them give it away. And I wonder if this is being used as a method to help away more and more of our power as people in this country.
It's for our own good.
And that's the point. It's for your own good. The most frightening words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
So what can we do?
I don't know. I think the answer to most people is be aware of it. Be aware of the fact that you have, that's one of the reasons we do this, I guess. We're warning people to say, you have the rights to control your government. Your government doesn't have the right to control you. You vote those people out. It's why we have the Second Amendment. People to this day still say, "Oh, the Second Amendment's this, and you can't fight the army if people being armed couldn't stop." That's a lot of nonsense.
It was for hunting.
It's for hunting. It's all. It is not the truth. The Second Amendment exists so that the states, as independent units, if they needed to, is the idea. We, the people, could pull together and fight the federal government in the event of tyranny.
Right.
And people say, "Well, you can't beat the United States military." I'm not sure the United States military would want to fire on its own people. for one. And B, if you don't think a insurgent force can't hold big countries at bay, tell that to Afghanistan. They beat the Russians and they're beating us out of there. We can't quell them either. Of course, it's because it's a lot of small countries that should be broken into a lot of small nations and ruled by warlords and factions in itself. It shouldn't be tried to be one big nation. It's never been a big nation. It's only the imperial powers that wanted to make it one big nation. But the point is still, though, I mean, that's the whole idea about the states, too. We have the right to resist. States are supposed to be, we're in a voluntary union of states. And if the government becomes a tyranny, we're supposed to be able to fight against it. Now, I'm not recommending people do this, so don't go off and buy your guns and march on Washington or something. It isn't the case. But I do think that because they're not using that method, they're not attacking us. They're using the method of give us your freedoms and we'll take them slowly one by one.
We'll take care of you.
Well, anybody who wants a big government, that's all a big government does. A big government controls every aspect of your life. Sanders likes to talk about socialism, but the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, I've never Russia. He honeymooned there. And the government takes away your rights. The government tells you where you can work, where you can live, what you can do.
To me, this just seems like just a big tapestry, okay? First, they dumb us down, which they've been doing, and science has found that we're getting dumber. Now, we're just, okay, I'll sign up. That sounds good. I like health care for everybody.
Which, of course, is... this is one of the things that we've been hearing in this also. That's a good one to bring up. We'll see how amazing the government can be. We should have health care for everybody. We should have Medicare for everybody because then everyone would be taken care of. And we wouldn't have to worry about that. Yet the person who's developing the vaccines, not the government, it's private industries.
Right. Nobody seems to answer this for me. If health care is such a right, why isn't food and water a right first? Why aren't they giving us free food and water before health care?
I don't even. There's no answer to that because it's logical. Air first. Air's the first thing you need.
Right.
And then air, then it's food, water, and shelter for human beings.
Nobody's giving us those.
They'd be willing to if, they'll give us our tiny ration of little tiny shelters, our little bits of food, and we all live together and serve the great government state.
You notice how they're blaming capitalism for the empty bare shelves because people went in and, overindulged in toilet paper and stuff. They're saying it's because of capitalism.
And yet if you didn't have capitalism, all those stores are restocking. I mean, I could bet I'm going to Safeway after we get done today. I bet I could buy toilet paper when I'm there if I needed to, because I'm sure they've stocked it back up because capitalism allows for people. I expect the prices could go up on it, though, because that would be logical. If you're having to produce more, then the price of toilet paper is probably going to go up. And
Venezuela, which is socialist, they have bare shelves, but they won't be restocked.
They don't get refilled. No, the people at the high end, the elites. This is the problem with the whole philosophy about a big government. Government is it's run by elites. It's like Spanish California. You have the alcaldes and the dons, and then you have the peones. You have the workers. That's a big government system that work too, guys, okay? If you don't mind being a peon or a peasant and working for a lord, in this case a don, California seems to be trying to make that again. Nancy Pelosi living in her big hacienda estate somewhere.
Since you're the history dude, you're like a professor of history.
That's the rumor, yeah.
Can you name all the times that we know of where socialism has succeeded?
Sure, none. It's easy. Socialism doesn't succeed. You can have socialist elements in capitalist and free market economies. That would be what Sweden would tell you. Sweden, for example, a lot of the North countries they use, Norway and Sweden, that are brought out, when their government officials are asked, so you're a socialist country, they'll go, no, we're not. We're a free market country. They tax their people heavily, and because of that, they are able to provide like health care for everybody. Mm-hmm. There's only 20 million of them, though, and they're all homogenous people who speak the same language. But I mean, the whole point is that they have elements, and we have elements of socialism too. I mean, from a strict point of view, a union is a form of socialism.
Social security, right?
Right. It's supposed to be social security insurance is what they originally were called it. The idea that if you that way we're having people set aside money, but that became a total nonsense when they spent the fund. There was over $1 trillion in the Social Security fund, and they said, we're going to put it in the general coffers, and it disappeared and has never come back. So I got news for you. The government still owes, and that was from my time. This is my Social Security coming up. They owe me $1 trillion still. Somewhere along the line, or all of us $1 trillion.
Funny how that works, huh?
But there isn't any working socialist system. You could say the Soviet Union. Okay, it was a socialist country, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, but it wasn't. And it wasn't communism either. It was a oligarchy, meaning a group of people dictating. dictatorship, an oligarchical. Again, it's the elites who run the country, the commissars, like Comrade Sanders wants to be, a commissar Sanders, and then they ruled over everybody below them. I mean, it's the same as the Spanish California. It's the small leaders, and you have all the peons. It's enforced by the military is what it is. So people get their ration of happiness. They don't get their happiness. They don't have the right to pursue happiness. Everything is rationed out, including happiness and freedom. In those countries, there isn't any successful communist nations, and been a lot of them, and none of them have ever succeeded.
What about democratic socialism? Can you name any time in history where they put the word democratic in front of socialism to make democratic socialism? Has that ever succeeded?
It depends on how you're defining it, I guess. I mean, you could say elements of the United States is democratically socialist because we have things like Social Security. That would be considered a socialist idea. Food stamp programs, things like that, those would be considered socialist ideas. But again, do they work? Are they a benefit? Throwing Democrat in front of it doesn't make it any better. There's a difference between socialism makes people everyone has to be under the government's restrictions as compared to humanitarianism. Humanitarianism is like charities, and you get far more with those than you do with the government doing anything. I mean, I learned that in Grays Harbor from working recently because I had some dealings with the homeless recently. There are many, many private organizations that are doing far more than our government is doing about the issue of the homeless. Because if you let charities alone and get out of their way, they can generally accomplish amazing things. People will generally do good things if given an opportunity to do it.
But they want to stop all those organizations and do it themselves, don't they?
Well, that's what they want to do because the government doesn't like other people having the power because, again, why do you want to control people's food, their health, everything about their lives? Well, because you want to control the people. This is the bad part of socialism because it ultimately, it's supposed to turn into communism, it's supposed to disappear. Well, that's what Marx said, but it isn't true. And socialism turns into dictatorship and it never goes away. There isn't any, I'm sorry, I'd hate to be the bearer of ill tidings, but, universal health care only works if you have a rich country with a small population. We have 360 million people.
All with their hand out saying, I want, I want, I want.
To be fair, it's probably a vast minority that are that way, but it's enough that it drains your system to the point of failure. Right now, they're talking about because of this coronavirus, again, the Trump administration's moving a huge amount of stuff to get things organized, and Congress is talking about a big stimulus package. Could be as much as $1 trillion.
Well, doesn't illegal immigration cost us something like $139 billion, or is that just for California?
It definitely runs way into the negative. Immigration people who are the pro-illegal people will say, oh no, they get charged taxes, they're a benefit to but it isn't true because, one, if you're being taxed and everything in the state, to work in the United States, it means you're here by fraud anyway because you've had to work, you have to have a Social Security number. So unless you're here on a visa, you have violated the country and committed fraud by duplicating somebody's Social Security number so you can work. And in the end, you're not going to be able to get those money back. In the end, person is going to end up having to become a burden on the system. Since they have nothing to fall back on, they're going to fall back on welfare and other things to be able to survive. You're creating, again, a caste of second-class citizens who don't get to come into being the rights of full citizenship. So all they do is they work until their bodies fail, and then they have to become a drain on the system entirely.
Well, let's lighten it up, shall we?
Okay.
Shall we talk pop culture coming up?
Sure, that'd be fun. Let's talk pop culture.
This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
The problem with believing that you're special is that you will believe you deserve special treatment just because you're special. And yet the world is always going to judge you based on contribution. And that's what they have a tendency to forget. Your mom and daddy think you're special, but that's it. The rest of us want you to do something, to contribute something.
They're banning sports altogether because if you're on the losing team, it makes the kids feel bad.
Non-confrontational sports options.
The most important lesson any of us will ever learn is how to lose. We will spend more time losing in life, and that's where all the great lessons come from. We're cheating these kids bad.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com. This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
All of the people who are ascribed to this liberal, progressive ideology, the people at the pool who didn't like that you were reading my book, Deborah Messing, she's another Hollywood hypocrite. She wants to know who's attending a Trump fundraiser so that then they can let their producers know or directors know the people they don't want to work with. This is McCarthyism. We have free speech in this country. We are allowed to vote for whomever we want, but the hate is so intense. They have a plot to remake America, to shut down the right, to make sure that we can get as many legals coming in as 144,000 in 1 month. Give them a license and let them vote.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com.
Today, we are going to talk about a news story that I really just missed this one altogether a few days ago. There's clearly been an insane amount of news on so many different fronts, from the sporting world, the political world, the entertainment world, the real world, literally every aspect of the planet. There has been news going on. So this one slipped right past me, but I think it's important to point out what's going on here and highlight it. So Ray Carson, the author for the upcoming novelization of The Rise of Skywalker, doesn't like men and doesn't like white men, and wants you to know how powerful, how emotional it was to see a girl Jedi on the big screen. She desperately wanted to see a girl Jedi on the big screen. So in The Force Awakens, when the lightsaber whips past Kylo's hand to land in Rey's instead, I waited 40 years for that moment. So emotional, so amazing. Except,
old.
There were female Jedi in the prequels, and Ahsoka was in the Clone Wars movie. And you would know this if you actually were a Star Wars fan. You would know this if you actually cared as much as you claim you do. Because even if it wasn't a prominent moment in the prequel movies with a female Jedi, it would have still stood out to you that there were female Jedi in those movies.
Okay, so according to this person, there was no female Jedis before Rey.
Again, if you haven't bothered to watch the what's happened before, you haven't bothered to look at the movies and the cartoon series and I don't know what you call a cartoon series when it's done in 3D.
Even the prequels had female Jedis.
There were female Jedis in that also. There wasn't any. The Force doesn't seem to care one way or another whether or not you have a uterus or not. It just seems to go to whoever can wield it.
Oh, you're so toxic.
Well, I mean, a lot of them are. None of them. I mean, how do you know? They have all these races in Star Wars that are somewhat humanoid, but how do you know what the males and females look like in that? I mean, they could all be female.
Right. Some of these aliens, or can I even call them aliens now?
As long as you don't call them illegal aliens.
Okay. Maybe they look like men, but have the tools of an earthly woman,
or maybe they're three species. They maybe need three to reproduce in their species, or maybe they reproduce asexually.
All right.
I mean, who knows? I mean, you've got these ones with the squid head ones. They had one of those in the beginning of The Mandalorian. Was that a male? How do you know? He didn't show you all of his tentacles apparently.
According to some Earthlings, it's like that here.
I know they do. They do say that.
I'm having a hard time believing this is real, but it's real. It is actually real. It's not a parody. It's not a joke. It's not someone making fun of Marvel Comics. It's someone at Marvel Comics. It is Marvel Comics that is actually producing this nonsense. They just continue to prove us right every single day. But this time they've taken it to the next level. We are on Bounding Into Comics, and Marvel Comics introduces new non-binary superhero called Snowflake as part of Woke New Warriors lineup. That's just the beginning here. This is absolutely unthinkable. But here we are. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Now, we're going to get through all this. I'm not going to read all of this because it's just talking about how the New Warriors writer, Daniel Kibblesmith, introduced a new team and detailed the premise of the upcoming series. So I clicked over and I watched the trailer. This is Daniel Kibblesmith. We have all these characters. So there's Trailblazer, there's Screen Time, but there's one part that I really want everybody to listen to. Because there is Snowflake and Safe Space.
Snowflake and Safe Space are the twins, and their names are very similar to Screen Time. It's this idea that these are terms that get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory, to take those.
That's pretty interesting. Yet Skrulls have males and females. I mean, in the horrible Captain Marvel movie, that's what it is, right? They have Skrulls, and they have boy Skrulls and girl Skrulls, because when they turn into their Skrull forms, they're played by actresses and actors. Mm-hmm. And yet the Skrulls can change their forms, okay? They could be a male. A Skrull, there's any reason a female Skrull can't look like a male and a male can't look like a female? Obviously not. Yet, when they go back to their base forms, they still have two genders.
How dare you say that? You're so full of hate.
But I'm not the one that did it. I'm just observing what I saw in the movie. You have male and female Skrulls in their baseline forms, so they have obviously two genders. I mean, it just seems to me, so how can you have they've got, what is it, Safe Space and what was the other one called? Snowflake.
Snowflake and Safe Space. Non-binary characters.
Non-binary characters, which means what? If in that case, then if you strip them, are they androgynous? I mean, it could be possible. I mean, maybe they mutated into some type of a drone form of human beings that has no gender. I mean, who knows with if you got mutations that can turn people into metal, logically they could turn them into something that's like a drone, that is neither male nor female. Or maybe a hermaphrodite that has both sexes. But really? I mean, okay, and why do we need to know this? I really never cared about the sex life of most of these superheroes. Aren't you supposed to here to watch them, break things and do heroic deeds and stuff? I mean, isn't that what they're there for?
I have a bunch of New Warriors books. I'm not going to act like they're my most favorite team. I'm knowledgeable on them, though. But when I saw the pictures that people were showing me about some of these characters that are supposedly involved in this, I thought it was a joke. Now, I watched it up until this particular point where the writer first starts speaking. And we're going to watch this together. We'll first start speaking about the actual show. It's about a minute and a half more. Just when they introduce some of the characters.
That we're introduced to is Trailblazer. She's a group home and foster kid who is volunteering at a senior center when this mysterious threat shows up and Night Thrasher runs to the rescue. And because she helps him, she ends up in the crosshairs of this new outlawed law. And she inherited from her grandfather a magic backpack of divine origin. We picked the name Trailblazer because she's somebody who charges into action. She knows that she can do some good with this, mysterious gift that she's been given. Screen time is a internet kid taken to its sort of logical conclusion. As a youth, he was exposed.
That's not an actual bad. It's on the nose, but Screen Time isn't a terrible name for a modern character. That's actually a good job.
To his grandfather's experimental internet gas, and that has patched him permanently into the World Wide Web. The word screen time is only ever used in a sort of restrictive sense, and because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, a lot of the names are about teens fighting against labels that are put on them. So with screen time, we liked the idea that he has infinite screen time. Snowflake and Safe Space are the twins, and
see, this is what I thought was a joke, okay? When I saw the screenshots, I was like, there's no way that this Marvel is going to do this, right? Marvel has had their on-the-nose efforts, okay? When I saw people talking about it, I thought it was a joke. Apparently, it's not.
So these are like hardcore comic people having issues, did you notice the, Screen Time? Fighting those who force a label on him or something like that. It's like, I could think of worse things to fight against other than
having a label put on you, maybe
right.
like having people killed and buildings
or
knocked
starvation
down.
Or homelessness. I don't want to be labeled this when I feel like this.
Well, I would tell them that that Marvel did this in the past a long time ago. I mean, John Byrne's old Alpha Flight series, you had twins in that were mutants, and they're North Star and Aurora, I believe. And they had super speed flying based powers, and the North Star character is the guy in it, and he was gay. Byrne established him gay a long time ago, and this is 25 years ago or something. So I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but and it's okay, accept that into the behavior. But
and most people didn't care, right?
And most people didn't care. There were some people who complained about it at the time, because the point comic books used to have the Comics Code seal on it, which meant it was looked through by a censor on whether it had stuff that would be considered acceptable for children to be reading. And once those disappeared, comics just turned into whatever they wanted to, pretty much. They don't want to run. Well, some of the off companies run stuff that's pretty pornish, but they do have most of the stuff is. But they like talking about all these weird little issues. And again, I mean, I think it's so strange when you're looking at it, you're talking about being identified and labels and rebellions. With again, the ultimate outsider would be a metahuman, because everyone would either hate them or love them. And in reality, everyone will somewhat always be afraid of them no matter what. It's like a man walking by with a gun in his hand. You may not be afraid because you may know the guy and everything, but people don't know who that guy is. They know that he has something potentially dangerous. Mm-hmm. If you were walking with a Bengal tiger on a leash, everyone's going to be apprehensive around you, even if you know it's a tame tiger, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the metahumans are much more dangerous than that. I mean, these are people who can point their fingers and blow your intestines up or whatever. They're dangerous.
Metahumans, mutants, right?
Mutants. I'm using the term superheroes.
Oh, you're such a hater. Oh, wait, no, that was me. I called them mutants. So I'm the hater. Yeah, it's such a hateful term.
Except then what Magneto calls him is homo superior. Of course, Magneto also, I don't know if Magneto's gay, but I know of course the actor who plays him is gay. So.
Right, and nobody cares.
Yeah, no, but I don't really. Ian McKellen. I mean, I don't really care one way or the other.
Right, it's his business, right?
Yeah, it is. That's one of the reasons he actually said he did the X-Men movies, because he liked the idea of that homosexuality has in his life, is particularly. I mean, because he's an old man.
Right.
He, was gays came out of the closet in his life.
But he was around before that, when it was a shameful thing.
And it was illegal. And there are even states right now, technically, I think it's still illegal. Homosexuality is still legal in some states in our country. The laws just aren't enforced. So, I mean, I can understand why he would be drawn to the outsider mutant character because of how, the life that he had lived. Of course, Magneto's directly connected up with, as a boy in a concentration camp, and it was the Nazis. His original thing on his storyline.
Mystique, she could be anything she wanted.
She would. She's like a Skrull, except she's limited to human forms, apparently, humanoid forms. She can't turn into... Skrulls can turn into gophers, apparently, if they want to, or, tigers or whatever, whereas Mystique is limited to human forms. But she can be male or female. They had her do that in the movie. At one point, I think she got into Logan's tent and turned into Jean, and then turned into him.
Right.
Because we all think, Hugh Jackman probably has one of his big fantasies is kissing himself, I'm sure. Well, we won't get into that. I'm being mean to Hugh Jackman, actually, because he seems like a nice guy. From what I've seen of him, he is a good guy, good actor, good fella, as compared to a lot of people in Hollywood, who are very quiet these days, have you noticed? We're not hearing a lot of the normal screaming Hollywood people screaming about things as much right now.
Why is that, you think?
I don't know, because they're scared of the disease. I don't know what it is. I mean, this is a different time. The way this is handled right now, we're going back to reality here, is that we've had this happen before in the country, but it's never been pointed out so much and aggravated to such a condition that it's affected such social changes, which is why I'm worried about it, because how easy, giving those rights up, how easy is it going to be to get them back?
Right. And just people are just standing by, just doing nothing. But what can you do?
Well, it is in a weird way, it's democracy, because people are agreeing to do it. If this were Europe, it may never change. But I think the problem with the American people, I think there's a reason why Donald Trump said 2 weeks to do these different things and then stop it, because he knows about how long the American people are going to take this crap. Mm-hmm. And then they're eventually going to say, screw it. And they're going to just go back to being... living their lives the way they should, which is what everyone should be. Everyone should be living their lives as if it's a bad cold flu season, and taking the necessary precautions and get on with your life. There's no reason. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion. I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on the radio, but I am just, but I've read the CDC stuff. I've the World Health Organization stuff. This is just really dangerous to people who are old or have compromised immune systems. Funny enough, Johnny, between you and I, you're probably more likely to be the COVID-19 be dangerous to you than to me, because I don't really have any immune issues, and you used to be a smoker.
Right.
And it attacks people who have lung problems, which means if you smoked, you have some lung damage. You're more likely to get pneumonia than I am.
A pack a day, I can't expect to have squeaky clean lungs.
Right. And even once you stop, you probably have some level of COPD damage.
Right. Right.
So I mean, you would technically, could be more vulnerable to the COVID-19. That's one of the reasons I think it became so quick in China. China has a huge amount of people who smoke. I mean, it's something like 70% of men in China smoke.
You would too if you lived there.
If you live in China, you'd smoke and do drugs, I'm sure.
But wait, the left wants us to be China and be communist, and China wants to be like us.
No, because China knows what it's like to be a socialist communist country, and they know that it sucks.
So why don't we do this? All the people that want to, be socialist, and socialism eventually leads to communism. Why don't they just move somewhere where it's a socialist country or communist country and just live happily ever after?
Because talk is cheap. I mean, you know as well as I do, it isn't the case. They like talking about it, but they don't want to actually do it. Trump came to office and everyone said, I'm moving to Canada. How many went?
Right. Plus, it's not easy to become Canadian. They don't let you just waltz in and take advantage of their crappy healthcare system.
I think at one point Donald Trump say he'd buy tickets for some of these people if they were only one-way tickets.
Right.
So I mean it's ridiculous. Like I said, we'll get through it. We'll see what happens in a couple of weeks when this period is over and people are thinking about trying to get their lives back to normal. I know what's going to happen. We're going to get a vaccine for it, and it's going to become irrelevant. And summer's going to get here, and the cold season, the flu season's going to go down.
But will this vaccination put a number on our forehead?
Yeah, probably. It'll be genetically gene tested so that it'll identify all the mutants in our society.
Right. Could that be it?
It'd make a more interesting movie than what Marvel's doing right now.
Well, why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? We'll make that comic.
Yeah, we'll make the comic the I'm trying to think of the Corona Squad or something.
Something.
The power is activated by the drinking of Corona beer at the right time. But anyway.
You're such a racist.
I like Corona beer. Well, you're a lion, dog, faced pony soldier.
I know, man. He called that lady that, and that was such a hate. He is a woman hater. Well, saying that, right? What a sexist woman hater, dividing people and targeting and bullying women when he did that. How come people aren't saying that?
Because he's Joe Biden. Because he's on the left, and he's more centrist. And when Biden's and it's down to grumpy old men here. It's Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. It looks like that Biden's going to be the winner, and Biden is lost. I mean, I watched a little of that debate with him and Sanders, and he out and out just lied several times through his teeth, and or in his case maybe dropping his teeth.
Yeah.
And Sanders did the same sort of thing. They both messed up. They're both. I mean, I'm older. I'm retirement age individual, but there comes a point, I do understand, people lose steps, and maybe you should not want to be president of the United States if you don't know what you're talking about anymore.
Now, they're saying he's sweeping states now.
He's got no opposition now.
He went from he should drop out. He's just bottom of the barrel now, to now he's Biden sweeps 4 states with authority. And
the problem with it's Bernie Sanders is the reason.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders became the absolute enemy because it's not that Sanders doesn't believe what the Democrats believe. The problem is he says it. It's a difference. It's like you're saying, well, he's a racist. Well, if you're a racist and you don't say anything, people give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you start going out and talking about people that you hate and stuff, people go, well, then you're racist, and all the people around you must be. If he's one of your people, then you're all racist. Well, I got news for you. The Democratic Party wants to have big government that's controlling every aspect of your life, which is what Bernie Sanders is saying. He's just saying it and being truthful about it. They're trying to get Joe Biden back in there because the problem with Sanders' version of it is it comes out as the big government, the way he's looking at it, it can be damaging to the whole deep state idea, people who want to run things as business as usual. They just want to have more power. So it's Sanders in a way is a problem because he's showing the game. He's showing the tricks, like the magician's tricks. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is how they're doing it. We're actually planning on stealing your rights and having a big government, and everybody on this side wants it, but nobody wants. They know that isn't going to get elected. So they're saying, well, Joe Biden is the moderate. Uncle Joe is moving kind of slow at the junction, though. He's not. He will be a great candidate for other people to control.
How did we get back on this?
I don't know, actually.
But we did. It happens.
Yeah,
I probably asked a question.
Well, you do that, and unfortunately, I tend to answer in a method that's generally considered pontification. But anyway, give me a soapbox, I'll stand on it.
It's all good.
As far as everything else, I mean, everyone's at home right now watching Netflix. Mm-hmm. It's too bad Netflix doesn't have anything good on, but that's just my opinion. I mean, I have Netflix, and I go and look at it and go...
You know what we're watching over again?
Mandalorian.
No, guess. That's not on Netflix.
Oh, that's right.
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things again. Well, I know your daughters are Stranger Things fans.
Right.
I mean, who wouldn't be? They're kids.
Right. Well, yeah.
And it's like, if you showed them Goonies, the old movie, they'd love it probably.
And having it set in the 80s kind of draws in the 80s generation too. Kind of, I remember that Michael Jackson shirt. I used to have one of those, And
who are you going to call? Ghostbusters.
Right. So that's pretty cool.
It's a good one. I haven't think of anything that, that I've been wanting to watch on there, though. Of course, like I said, this whole virus thing hasn't changed my life any. I'm living pretty much the way I normally do. The only thing I watched on Netflix recently was Castlevania.
What's that about?
Castlevania is from a video game called that. It's an animated, kind of an anime design feature dealing with... the main character was Dracula, Vlad Tepes, in the original story, and this is like the third season of it they had. My kids liked it, so they got me watching it, and I thought it was okay. I thought actually this season was more interesting. It's a kind of a magic-based world with demons and kind of almost like a D&D-ish world, but you've got Dracula in it, and you also have the church and Christians and peasants and monsters and demon-possessed things and all that. It was kind of interesting from a fantastic point of view. I'll watch it. I watched it once. That's it. I'm not going to watch it over and over again. But it kept my interest for the first part. Gory though, and it's MA, or I don't know if they use R as a rating. It would probably be R if it was a movie because it's a lot of blood and gore.
Remember when it was G, PG, R, and like X?
Then that was it. And then it got to be, then they went to G, and then they went to like PG, and then PG-13, and
right.
R, and MA, and then do we even have an X anymore? Isn't it?
Well, that'll do it for this episode of Johnny and the Professor. You want to let them know how to contact us to complain?
Well, hey, we'll take complaints. I've been getting some positive input on YouTube from some of our stuff recently, which is nice. I have really. But of course, you email us at jpshowfm@gmail.com, and we will answer in any emails that we get from people, and we'll put the questions on air. Of course, you can go to YouTube and hunt for Johnny and the Professor, put it in quotation marks, and you'll find all of our recent shows.
Okay, what if you don't put it in quotation marks, though?
You'll end up getting this like Professor movie with something else, or you'll get the Professor something else. You put it in quotes, you get the whole. Whenever you want to hunt for something on the internet, put it in quotation marks. It'll look for all the words. This is Professor Arms giving you your internet help for the day.
This has been Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times.